Our guest today is a candidate for mayor of Chicago. There we go. Thank you. There we go. He was first elected to the city council 29 years ago as a reformer and supporter of Mayor Harold Washington. His election helped give Mayor Washington a majority in the city council. Our guest today served as one of Mayor Washington's most trusted allies. In 1992, he was elected as the first ever Mexican American to the Illinois State Senate and served 2 terms. Our guest today serves as Cook County Commissioner. He emigrated with his parents from Durango, Mexico at the age of 10. He lives in Little Village with his wife, who is with us today, Evelyn. Evelyn, wave to everybody. They want to see you. Evelyn, thank you for being with us. Thank you. Thank you. Our guest today is the proud father of his daughter, Rosa, and 2 sons, Jesus and Samuel, and the proud grandfather of 3 beautiful geniuses, unquote. And finally, we want to thank him at the City Club. He's a kind-hearted person and Special Olympics volunteer who participated in this year's polar plunge. Ladies and gentlemen, Chuy Garcia. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. This is a nonpartisan event. Not a pep rally. Good afternoon, my fellow Chicagoans. I'm delighted to join you today. You've already met my running mate for the office of mayor, Evelyn Chinea de Garcia. 38 years of marriage and a wonderful journey. I am delighted to be here today and to have the opportunity to address you about the future of the city of Chicago and why I have taken the step of becoming a mayor as we stand a week away before Election Day. Before I begin my remarks, I would ask for a brief moment of silence as we're approaching the anniversary of the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King, someone who has had a powerful impact on my life since I was 13 years old. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jay, and all the members of the City Club for inviting me here once again. Today, I'm going to do something a little different than most candidates do a week before an election. Today, I'm going to tell you a hard truth. Chicago is becoming a city of the very rich and the very poor, with fewer and fewer people in between. We're becoming a city glittering with glittering buildings surrounded by crumbling neighborhoods. A city with the finest restaurants surrounded by communities full of people who can't afford a decent meal. A city with some job growth in a small area downtown, surrounded by a vast area where unemployment rates are 25 or 30%. A city with fancy shopping areas surrounded by other areas with boarded up business districts. As measured by the number of income and the bottom 20%, the Brookings Institution ranks Chicago among the top 10 most unequal cities in the nation. That's the record of this mayor, and it's not a record to tout. The consequences of it are devastating. We read about them every day. Chicago is now one of the gun violence capitals of the civilized world. There have been 10,000 shootings since the mayor took office. There have been 362 shootings since the beginning of this year. The relationship between the city's inequality and the city's violence is as plain as day. The vast and growing chasm between the wonderful little city right outside these walls and the other much bigger city that's around it is wrong. It's unfair. It's unjust. It's not in the interest of a single person in this room, and it's got to change. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not running to be the mayor of the poor or the rich. I'm running to be mayor of all Chicago. I love downtown Chicago. I've worked here for years, and I will continue to support development in our central business area as mayor. But there is more to downtown, to Chicago rather, than downtown, much more. In our debate last Thursday, the mayor defended his policy of overinvesting in the central areas of our city. He said, and I quote, "It gives us the resources to invest in our neighborhoods." In another time and place, there was another name for the mayor's philosophy. They called it trickle-down economics. In our debate, both candidates were asked what big project we'd take up in the next 4 years as mayor. I committed to revitalizing the Port of Chicago. What did the mayor say he'd do? Build more riverwalks. If you want to see the difference in what the mayor and I think is important to our city's future, that pretty much sums it up. Trickle-down is actually not a new policy at City Hall. They've been at it for a quarter of a century. Under this mayor, though, it's become accelerated. In fact, it's become the hallmark of his administration. Just look at the TIF funds. TIFs were invented precisely and specifically to subsidize development in areas that would not be developed, but for, their words, not mine, these funds. Where has the money gone in Chicago? Nearly half of the city's TIF money, 48% to be exact, has gone to an area stretching roughly from the Gold Coast on the north to McCormick Place on the south, and from the United Center on the west to the lake. In other words, our TIF money goes downtown. These locations contain just 11% of Chicago's population and 5% of the geographical area. But they've gotten half of the $1.3 billion in TIF money the mayor has passed out since he took office. But plainly, the mayor of Chicago is spending TIF money in the exact opposite way it's supposed to be spent, after promising not to do it. It's Robin Hood in the reverse. It's been going on for years. And the results of this misguided policy are plain to see. In the last 15 years, Chicago has lost over 200,000 people. They just got up and left. In 1970, nearly 70% of the city was middle class. Today, it's less than 40%. There are now more poor people in Chicago than working class people in Chicago. Combined, the very rich and the poor are now over 60% of the city. People aren't voting on this trickle-down policy in elections. They're voting with their feet. It's easy to see and to figure out why. The best areas of the city are too expensive for middle-class families, so they have to choose between other, more affordable areas of the city and the suburbs. If more affordable areas are slowly deteriorating or overrun by the violence, middle-class families leave. It's really that simple. It's especially true of young families with children. They don't just want safe neighborhoods. They want and have the right to demand good schools. If Chicago can't provide these good schools, they leave too. Unfortunately, our city government is developing, even actively promoting, two school systems, one for the fortunate and the other for everybody else. The mayor's solution to the problems in our public schools is charter schools, which are just the newest form of privatization. We've seen voucher ideas, tax credit ideas, and now this. I will give the school privatization folks credit. They never give up. In the end, things like vouchers and charters are all different verses of the same old song. Give up on public schools and let them be run privately. I say all this as the product of Chicago's Catholic schools, as a proud graduate of St. Rita High School. I believe in private schools. I went to one. At least my parents made me go there. But I just firmly, and I thank them, but I just as firmly and fundamentally believe that public school money should be spent on public schools. It's a principle in this nation that goes back to Thomas Jefferson, and I see no reason to change it. After privatizing so many schools, what happens to the remaining public schools? They become the places for families and kids who have no choice. Notice the pattern here. Great neighborhoods for the fortunate, deteriorating neighborhoods for the less fortunate. Good schools for the fortunate, substandard schools for the less fortunate. Faced with this situation, what happens to those in the middle? They leave. And those that remain get poorer. In the year 2000, 19% of Chicagoans lived in poverty. Today, it's over 22%. That's 500,000 people living in poverty in Chicago right now. The city's increasing poverty and declining middle class has a direct consequence on the city's finances. We've been talking about finances, right? In the flurry of numbers and charges and countercharges, nobody talks about this. Chicago's growing inequality puts increasing pressure on our city's resources, and a declining middle class puts increasing pressure on our ability to pay our bills. Not talking about the real consequences of economic inequality and middle class flight in Chicago will not make those consequences go away. It will make them worse. The solution is simple to say, but hard to achieve. It's growth, real population growth. It's our only real way out of this mess. The hallmark of my administration will be social justice, not just because it's the right thing to do, it's because it's good public policy. It's good business for the future of Chicago. A more equitable city will be a more attractive city. A more attractive city will grow. It will be more educated. It will be less violent. It will have a growing middle class. It will prosper. So how do we get there? The first thing you do when you're in a hole is you stop digging. We need to end the policies that have increased inequality. We need to end the policies that have increased inequality in Chicago and are driving the middle class out of Chicago. We must completely revamp the tax increment finance program and spend the money where it's supposed to be spent, in neighborhoods that need the money. It's not a slush fund for wealthy special interests, developers, and campaign contributors, and in a Garcia administration, it won't be. We need to change. We need to change how the city collects money and from whom. The mayor has raised over $700 million in taxes and fees on cable bills, telephone bills, water bills, sewer bills, every kind of bill we can afford. And he's hauling in an extra $70 million a year by essentially running a citywide red light camera speed trap. These taxes and fees and tickets hit the poorest among us hardest. It's not just wrong, it's bad policy. How much can you squeeze poor and working people in Chicago before there's nothing left to squeeze? But here's the problem. If we massively increase our taxes on our fragile middle classes to shoulder the burden of our mountain of unpaid bills, more of them will leave, and the city will become more unequal. And the bill pile will grow, and on, eventually spiraling out of control. In the end, we need to reform our entire tax structure to stop squeezing the people who can least afford to pay and making sure we get revenue from those who can most afford to pay. First, this means reducing our reliance on property taxes, ending the practice of tacking endless taxes and fees onto every bill that shows up in the mail. and stopping the use of hidden camera traffic tickets as a source of revenue. Second, it means expanding the sales tax base to include big-time services, excluding small services like family trips to the vet, and adding a new luxury surcharge on things like yachts and fur storage. Third, it means finally getting a real progressive income tax in Illinois, which will do more to increase revenue and reduce our reliance on property and other taxes than anything else. Fourth, we need to look at every innovative way to deal with our massive fiscal imbalances and regressive tax collection practices. All of this will take time. It will take work. Here and in Springfield, it will take commitment. And yes, it will mean that the wealthy will have to pay more. But it must be done because we cannot go on like this. We must end the violence on our streets. It will be my personal mission. The mayor promised to hire 1,000 new police officers, but he broke his promise just as he did on the TIF money. Today, we have 400 fewer police officers and 10,000 more shootings in Chicago than on the day he took office. How can we let this go on? How long before it becomes harder and harder for a business to recruit a new IT manager from Dallas or an administrative assistant from Columbus if all he or she reads is how 47 more people were shot in Chicago over a weekend? And when he or she is recruited, where will they choose to live? In Chicago or in Naperville? How do we keep people in the city if this is all they hear and see? I will hire the police the mayor promised to hire, train them in real community policing, and work to stop the epidemic of shootings in this city. We can phase in the hiring over 4 years, pay for half of it with the money that currently goes to police overtime. Toss in the money from just one luxury hotel TIF subsidy, and you've got the other half. I will fight for new laws. I will fight for new laws while we mobilize community from the local and federal level to get the guns off our streets. I will do it, so help me God. We must finally commit ourselves as a city together to making Chicago's public schools a model for the nation. It's a long road between here and there, but here's how we start. First, we must cut class sizes, especially in the early grades. Study after study has shown that the smaller class sizes in early years have a significant impact on achievement. And which students show the most improvement? Low-income students. If we really want something about poverty, want to do something about poverty in this city, let's start by helping our most needy kids. Second, we need to stop investing time and money teaching students to take standardized tests. Let's start by teaching students what they need to learn instead. And we should broaden our definition of education to include music, the arts, physical education, critical thinking, and cultural growth. Third, we must add seats in selective enrollment schools. Every year, thousands of children qualify for admission to these schools but cannot attend due to a lack of seats. This factor in particular drives many families to move to the suburbs when their children reach high school age. It is inexcusable to drive our strongest students and their families out of the city. We must stop it. Fourth, we work with stakeholders in our schools, parents, students, and yes, teachers, instead of battling with them and trying to impose our will on them by fiat. Finally, we need to get City Hall and its politics out of the schools once and for all. The fighting with teachers and school profit-making schemes by friends of the mayor have eroded public confidence to the point where between 83 and 93% of voters chose to elect the school board in the last election. And that's exactly what's going to happen in my administration. We're going to let people elect the school board. The people of Chicago will almost certainly run our schools better than the mayor, and they sure can't run them any worse. Where can you find the money to do these things? Well, in the last 4 years, Chicago schools have lost $900 million in property tax revenues that was diverted into the mayor's TIF operation. Another $30 million was spent on contracts to just 3 politically connected contractors and school consultants. Another $5 million was forked over to companies connected to a member of the school board. It goes on and on. I'm not new to these issues. In the state Senate, I worked to pass a sweeping law to help middle and low-income families stay in their neighborhoods, even as these neighborhoods began to gentrify. The bill we crafted was a model of fairness and equity that can guide our city policies as we work to achieve new growth. I've fought for fairness and for people my whole life. Like our president, I spent time as a community organizer, and that's not a bad thing. As a young man, we picketed a rat-infested movie theater on 26th Street. We used the sit-in to shame a government bureaucrat who was doling out summer jobs to the kids and cronies. At UIC, we forced the administration to create the Latin American Cultural Center, which exists to this day. We forced City Hall to build the first new high school in Little Village in North Lawndale in over 100 years. I built a neighborhood community development corporation that's helped thousands of people. I have deep roots in our city's philanthropic community, and my experience in philanthropy has taught me one thing. Our city's civic leaders are good, decent, kind people who understand that we're all in this together. Benjamin Franklin once said that we all must hang together or surely we will hang separately. I understand that. Every civic leader I've met with understands that. Everyone in this room understands that. People in Chicago aren't asking for much, just a little. For their lives to be a little more secure, their families a little stronger, their streets a little safer, their schools a little better. It's not much to ask. We can't have one Chicago for the fortunate and one for the rest of us. It's not right. It doesn't work. We can change Chicago, make it work for all the people, and that's what we're going to do together. Thank you. Thank you very much.
If you have questions, give them to our, raise your hand, walk among you. Okay, we have a whole bunch of questions, all seeming from the same person. Hold on. All right. Okay, here's a question from Jackie D. Thorne. Neat hand, very good printing. This election depends on voters, not polls. This guy knows that. Or endorsements. How will you get people to vote? Besides the speech.
We already have. The unprecedented early vote that has been cast is part of our effort. Moving toward April the 7th, we have organized the largest army of volunteers, perhaps in modern history, of the city of Chicago. You will see it in full operation on Tuesday, April the 7th.
Wow. A lot of stuff coming in. Steve Shucker from Communications Consultant. Given the rough present and bleak future outlook, is it really a win to become the next mayor of Chicago?
If one cares about the future of the city of Chicago, if one believes in the people of Chicago, if one loves Chicago, it's a great win and it is a great honor.
From a new professor from DePaul University, Nick, I won't mispronounce your last name, so don't worry about it. But Chewy did lead the Greek Independence Parade yesterday, so he could do it. How do you propose paying for the city's required $500 million to cover the pension deficit and pay for the increased police and school programs you speak about?
In my financial plan that we released 3 weeks ago, we laid out an innovative 21st century approach to managing the city's finances. It includes working collaboratively with the 4 sister agencies of the city, the Park District, city colleges, and Chicago Public Schools to engage in shared savings, talking to each other, eliminating duplication. We save approximately $500 million by doing that. Remember, this is the tax bill that people get. We also will open up the books and share with the public where our revenues are going, where they will stop going as we move forward. Then we will consider a host of revenue sources that Chicago needs to move forward. Revenue sources will always seek to be progressive, to minimize regressive impact, especially on the poor and middle-class families. That is how we begin to move forward. There'll be a host of options that will be very difficult to choose from, but we will be transparent. We will ensure that the people of Chicago know how we're going to move forward, and no longer will revenue measures be masked in things like public safety when they're there essentially to generate new revenues. We will be candid with voters as we move forward.
We have a question here from Reverend Jackson dealing with stop and frisk. Reverend, I think you're saying that New York is 4 times as big and has less stop and frisk. Is that it? And is racially motivated?
4 times more stop and frisk in Chicago than New York.
Chicago has 4 times as many stop and frisk than the city of New York. What's your view on stop and frisk? It's been written about a great deal.
Haven't read the entire ACLU report that was released, but it certainly gets to the heart of the matter, that we don't have good priorities in Chicago, that in order for there to be better crime-solving strategies in place, we must get to community policing, establishing real relationships of trust and mutual respect. A police chief under my watch will not move forward with a policy that has a disproportionate impact of this nature. We must end the school and street to prison complex that exists here. We've been addressing it at Cook County government by reducing the number of detainees at Cook County Jail, by being practical about it, releasing nonviolent offenders who have no business being in jail, who need to be before mental health care providers, with school alternatives, employment alternatives, alternatives like that. We reduced the population from 10,000 inmates to presently about 8,500 and on the downswing. We did it collaboratively, working with all the stakeholders, including the judges, the sheriff, the state's attorney. We can make headway in this regard. Everyone deserves equal treatment, and will have equal treatment in a Garcia administration.
Probably only at the City Club you have a question from the Reverend Jesse Jackson, followed by a question from Mark Weiermuller. Sort of a Judy Collins moment. You looked at life from both sides now. Here you go. A little humor there, just to lighten the mood. Okay, here we go. Do you think raising city taxes on the so-called rich will just chase more people and businesses out of Chicago?
I believe in fair taxation. I believe in progressive taxation. I believe that those who have more in society, those who earn more, have the potential to contribute a little more. To me, that is plain common sense, and it's fairness. We will move forward under those principles. That's how it works in states that have a progressive income tax. For example, places like Minnesota, they do a lot better. They don't have the annual fiscal crisis debating about how we fund education, how we fund healthcare, how we fund mental health services, on and on. Those states, by the way, are doing much better than Illinois economically.
A couple of you handed in questions but didn't sign your name. I should have mentioned that, but that's a no-no. You got to sign, even if it's somebody else's name, but you got to sign your name. I mean, if you don't have the courage to say who the heck you are and ask the question, I mean, there was a sandbag question. Chewy took care of it. All right, this is from, God almighty. Is it Josie? That's what I thought. From the IRC. Okay, whatever. How would your style of decision-making on difficult issues be different from the mayor's? And why, that's the good part. And why would that be better for the city? Good question.
In order for Chicago to come together, it needs to have a mayor that's going to be collaborative, that's going to be inclusive, a mayor who's not running for national office, a mayor who has no other aspirations. That would be me. I will be inclusive. I will set a big table. I will listen to all stakeholders in the city of Chicago. We are in a serious predicament. The future of the city does hang in the balance. We need the right type of public policies to move forward, and I will listen to all of the voices in the city before making the tough decisions that the city will require in order to stabilize the city and be able to make it a city for everyone.
We have a few more questions, and there's a whole bunch of people waiting to jump at you, Chewy. I think they're called, it's a new street gang, the media. Okay. Nora Handler, supporting Illinois' brothers and sisters. The mayor closed 6 mental health clinics. You have proposed reopening them. How do you plan to fund them?
So the mayor closed 6 clinics. At the same time, he increased the budget of the Department of Health, and they hired a variety of administrators. We begin there. Frontline services have to come first. You know where many of the mental health patients wound up? At Cook County Jail. That's in my district, in the 7th district. I know firsthand. You've heard Sheriff Dart talk about mental health and the fact that the jail has become the largest provider of mental health in Cook County. That needs to be stopped. There's a cost to it. It's not that big. Reducing the number of bureaucrats in the Department of Health is a part of the solution. The rest of it will come from additional efficiencies in government. It's a matter of priorities. Mental health should be a basic priority for us, and we need to keep people out of jail unnecessarily. They don't wind up there because they're criminals. They wind up there because they're not getting their medications or the professional care that they were getting at the local neighborhood clinics.
Drew Barrett, Angel Flight, is that it? Is that it? Okay. Nope, I'm not commenting, Ms. Ivy. I just, Angel Flights, thank you. What is Angel Flights? Marketing service. Oh, I thought maybe you were a mortician. All right. Couldn't help myself. I know. Yeah, I had to. All right. Seriously now. You could use that one too, Chair. Would you consider giving preference to City of Chicago-based company in pursuit of City of Chicago contracts the way the feds give some preferences to veteran-owned businesses? Another good question.
If we're going to foster local economic development in Chicago, and especially in communities that have been disinvested in for so long, I think that's a good idea. As long as it passes the muster of the law, we should engage in buying local and buying Chicago.
Okay, we have a couple that are repetitive to questions in the ballpark, and the one that's unsigned is a very good question, so we'll end with that. Breaking, I know, a tradition, but it's a very good question. What will you do, probably as mayor, to improve MWBE programs? There are many certification files there with very slow processing for years, which takes away business opportunities, basically minority businesses. Go ahead, sir.
Ensuring that we move expeditiously on applications for certification, working with entities like the Minority Business Development Council to be more responsive. The city needs to be more customer-friendly to business in Chicago, especially small businesses. Small business people everywhere I've gone in every ethnic community have told me that the city is too punitive. uncooperative. They make you come back time and time again. We must be business-minded. We must take care of business. Small business people are an important role that they play in neighborhood retail development. That is one of the imperatives to make Chicago a better city for all neighborhoods. Thank you.
Last question, one more question. Always leave them with a chance to hit one out of the park. Are you ready? Yes. Last week, CPS tried to sell $550 million in bonds. I think, is that right? Okay, no one said anything. But could only sell $200 million. What comment do you have on this?
One of the mayor's promises when he ran for the office 4 years ago was to put the city's fiscal house in order. It is not in order. We're in a financial freefall. The downgrades of Chicago Public School bonding 3 weeks ago, two of them, one by Moody's, one by Fitch, is an indication of the poor stewardship of the city's finances. We can and I will do better.
How about a round of applause? We got-